Before this story begins, remember one thing. The galaxy thinks it already knows what power looks like. Ancient empires, proud fleets, crystal domes, warrior races, and civilizations that have ruled the stars for thousands of years. But somewhere far away on a small blue planet in the Orion Arm, humanity has been watching in silence. And when the universe finally mistakes kindness for weakness, the gardeners will reveal what they were really growing.
The Galactic Assembly had ruled the stars for longer than most species had been alive. For 12,000 years, its banners had flown over trade routes, war zones, colony worlds, mining belts, and ancient stations carved into the bones of dead moons. Hundreds of alien civilizations sat beneath its crystal dome, each one proud, old, and certain of its place in the universe. There were the Velkori, tall silver beings with 6 eyes and voices like ringing glass. There were the Draxan, armored reptilian warriors who measured honor by the number of battles they survived. There were the Orathi, floating creatures of gas and light who claimed they could calculate the future by reading the movement of stars. And then there were humans. Small, soft, young. A species from a blue planet in the Orion Arm, barely noticed by anyone important. To the Assembly, humanity was not dangerous. Humans had no empire worth mentioning. Their ships were slow compared to the great war cruisers of the older races. Their shields were primitive. Their weapons were outdated. Their diplomats smiled too much, asked too many questions, and spent most of their speeches talking about peace, soil, oceans, food, and rebuilding damaged worlds. The Assembly gave them a name. The Gardeners. It was not meant as a compliment. Let the humans fix their little planet, the Draxan admirals would laugh. Let them plant trees while real civilizations command the stars. For decades, humanity stayed quiet. They did not challenge the Assembly. They did not demand territory. They did not build glittering palaces in orbit. They simply watched, listened, repaired, and waited. The old races believed this silence was weakness. They believed humans avoided war because they feared it. They believed the gardeners had no teeth. That was the Assembly's first mistake. The first world to go silent was Corellon 9. It was a mining planet on the outer edge of Assembly space, rich in iron, crystal fuel, and deep underground cities. At first, the Assembly believed the silence was only a communication failure. Corellon 9 was old. Its signal towers often broke during dust storms. Then the rescue fleet arrived. They found no cities, no miners, no emergency beacons. Only blackened continents and oceans turned the color of ash. Every building had been stripped down to its foundations. Every machine had been ripped apart. Even the planet's moons had bite marks carved into their surfaces, as if something massive had chewed through the stone. The Assembly sent investigators. None returned. 3 days later, another colony went dark. Then another. Then 7 more in a single night. The enemy did not announce itself. It did not send demands. It did not offer terms. It simply arrived, consumed, and moved on. They were called the Vorik Swarm. A race of insect-like war machines wrapped in living armor, moving through space in endless black clouds. Their ships were not built. They were grown. Their weapons did not fire clean beams of light. They spat burning acid, magnetic storms, and clouds of metal-eating spores. The Draxan sent their proudest battle fleet. It lasted 19 minutes. The Velkori activated their crystal shields. The Vorik ate through them. The Orathi tried to predict the swarm's path. The swarm split into 12 directions and proved every prediction wrong. System after system fell. Trade lanes collapsed. Refugee ships filled the stars. Worlds that had never known fear began broadcasting the same desperate message. Help us. Inside the Galactic Assembly, panic spread faster than the war. The High Chancellor slammed 4 trembling hands onto the council table. If the Vorik reached the inner rim, he said, there will be no assembly left to save. Silence filled the chamber. Then an old lizard-like ambassador slowly raised his head. The humans, he whispered. They have not joined the war. For 1 second nobody spoke. Then the chamber erupted in laughter. The gardeners? A Draxan admiral sneered. What will they do? Throw seeds at the swarm? But the laughter died quickly. Because every great fleet had already failed. And the gardeners were the only ones left. The message to Earth was written with more desperation than respect. It was sent through every diplomatic channel the Assembly had once considered too important for humans. Military frequencies. Emergency relays. Deep space quantum beacons. Even the old treaty line that had not been used since humanity first joined the Galactic Assembly as a minor observer species. The High Chancellor did not ask. He begged. To the government of Earth and all Terran colonies, the Galactic Assembly formally requests immediate military assistance against the Vorik swarm. Our defensive lines are collapsing. Civilian systems are under threat. Any support you can provide will be remembered. The Assembly waited. 1 hour passed. Then 6. Then 1 full day. No answer came. The Draxan Admiral folded his armored arms and scoffed. They are hiding, he said. As expected. But the old lizard ambassador did not laugh this time. His eyes remained fixed on the communication screen. On the 3rd day Earth replied. There was no speech. No promise of friendship. No emotional declaration. No long diplomatic explanation. Only 7 words appeared on every screen inside the assembly chamber. We are coming. Clear the path. The room went silent. The High Chancellor blinked at the message. Clear the path, he whispered. What does that mean? No one answered. Because far beyond assembly space, near the dark side of Earth's moon, something ancient and hidden began to wake. Docking clamps the size of cities released. Engines buried under lunar mountains burned blue for the first time in 70 years. Across the surface of Earth, sirens did not scream in panic. They rang like bells. In oceanside cities, desert bunkers, mountain bases, and orbital stations, humans looked up at the sky and understood what the rest of the galaxy did not. The gardeners had been called. And the gardeners were done waiting.
So far, the Galactic Assembly has spent centuries looking down on humanity. The Valkyrie, the Draxan, the Earthy, and the old powers all saw humans as soft, peaceful, and harmless. They laughed at the name gardeners, believing Earth had no teeth. But then Caroline 9 went silent. The Vorak swarm arrived, consuming worlds, destroying fleets, eating through shields, and turning every proud prediction into failure. And when the assembly finally begged Earth for help, humanity answered with only 7 words: We are coming. Clear the path. Now something hidden near the dark side of Earth's moon has awakened. The galaxy still thinks it called farmers, but what is coming is not a garden tool. It is the first truth the assembly was never ready to face.
The final defensive line formed above the Ravik system. 500 assembly ships gathered in broken formation around the blue-white star. They were all that remained of 7 proud fleets. Their hulls were cracked. Their shields flickered. Their crews sat in silence, watching the darkness beyond the outer moon. The Vorik were coming. On the main tactical screen they appeared like a spreading disease. Thousands of black shapes poured out of hyperspace. Their living ships twisted and crawled through space as if the vacuum itself was a nest. Acid cannons opened across their armored bodies. Swarms of smaller attack craft peeled away like insects leaving a corpse. The High Chancellor's voice trembled over the fleet channel. All ships, hold formation. No one believed they could. The old lizard ambassador looked at the empty space behind the assembly fleet and whispered, Where are the humans? A Draxan captain laughed bitterly. Probably still polishing garden tools. Then the sensors screamed. Not beeped. Not warned. Screamed. Every screen across the assembly fleet turned white. Space behind them began to bend inward, as if an invisible hand had grabbed reality and twisted it. A wound of blue fire opened in the dark. It grew wider, larger, deeper, until the stars around it stretched into thin lines. At first, the alien crews thought a moon was emerging. Then they saw engines. Then armor. Then guns. The object pushed through the tear in space slowly, violently, like something too massive for the universe to allow. It was not sleek. It was not beautiful. It had no crystal sails, no golden fins, no elegant curves. It was a mountain of black iron. Its hull was scarred before the battle had even begun. Its armor plates overlapped like the scales of some ancient beast. Towers of cannons lined its sides. Railgun barrels longer than city streets rotated into place. Missile bays opened like hungry mouths. The ship kept coming. 1 mile. 5 miles. 10 miles. 20 miles. The assembly fleet looked like toys beside it. Across its side, painted in plain white human letters, were 3 words. No one left. Below them was the ship's name. Innis Gravekeeper. The Draxan captain stopped laughing. The Vorik swarm slowed. For the first time since the war began, the enemy hesitated. Then a calm human voice filled every open channel. "This is Captain Elena Cross of the Terran Navy ship Gravekeeper." Pause. "Assembly vessels, move behind us." The High Chancellor stared at the screen. "Captain, your ship is alone." Captain Cross replied quietly. "No." The Gravekeeper's guns began to glow. "We brought humanity." For several seconds no one moved. The assembly fleet floated between terror and disbelief, its captains staring at the impossible human vessel that had just placed itself between them and the swarm. Then the Vorik attacked. Their front line opened like a field of black flowers. Thousands of organic cannons unfolded from their ships, pulsing red and green. A storm of acid plasma, magnetic spikes, and metal-eating spores launched toward the Gravekeeper. The assembly crews braced for impact. The human ship did not dodge. It did not raise elegant light shields. It did not retreat behind mathematics, prediction engines, or energy barriers. It simply moved forward. The first wave struck its armor. Acid burned across black iron. Plasma splashed against layered steel. Magnetic spikes slammed into the hull and shattered. Spores tried to eat through the outer plates, but the armor was too thick, too dense, too old, and too stubborn. On the assembly flagship, a Velkori officer whispered, "They are not avoiding the fire." The old lizard ambassador answered softly, "They do not need to." Inside the Gravekeeper, Captain Elena Cross stood in the center of the bridge with both hands behind her back. Around her, warning lights blinked, but no one panicked. "Damage report," she said. "Outer armor scorched," replied the tactical officer. "Paint is gone on decks 12 through 30. No breaches." Captain Cross nodded once. "Return fire." The side of the Gravekeeper opened. The assembly expected lasers. They expected plasma lances. They expected some hidden human energy weapon, something bright and clean and advanced. Instead they saw barrels. Thousands of them. Old, ugly magnetic rail cannons locked onto the swarm. Deep inside the human ship, generators roared. Ammunition loaders fed solid tungsten rods into firing chambers. The Vorik had built their defenses against energy. They had shields that bent plasma. They had living armor that absorbed lasers. They had spores that devoured missiles. They had never prepared for rocks moving at a fraction of light speed. Captain Cross gave the order. "Fire." The Gravekeeper shook. In space there was no sound, but every ship in the assembly line felt the vibration through their hulls like thunder traveling through bone. The first railgun volley crossed the battlefield. Tungsten rods hit the Vorik front line like falling stars. Their shields flashed once, then failed. Their living armor split open. The rods did not explode. They did not need to. They punched through entire ships, entered through the front, exited through the back, and left behind tunnels of fire, gas, and shredded flesh metal. One Vorik cruiser became 2 burning halves. Then 10. Then 100. The swarm tried to spread out. The Gravekeeper adjusted. Another volley fired. Then another. Then another. The sky filled with silent destruction. On the assembly tactical map, enemy markers vanished so quickly that the system could not count them fast enough. "Impossible," the Draxan admiral breathed. "Their weapons are primitive." The lizard ambassador watched a Vorik battleship fold in half under a kinetic strike. "No," he said. "They are honest." Within 4 minutes, the Vorik front line was gone. Within 7, their second wave broke formation. Within 9, more enemy ships had been destroyed by one human vessel than by the entire assembly navy in 3 months of war. The High Chancellor could not speak. Across every alien bridge, officers stared at the same image. The ugly black human ship pushing forward through enemy fire. Not shining. Not graceful. Not divine. Just unstoppable. Then Captain Cross opened the fleet channel again. Her voice was calm. "Assembly vessels, remain behind us." Pause. "We are clearing the garden." For the first time since the war began, the Vorik swarm pulled back. Their front lines scattered across the Ravik system, leaving trails of burning gas and broken armor behind them. Hundreds of their living ships drifted powerless through space, pierced clean through by human railguns. The assembly fleet began to cheer. Not loudly at first. Just small voices over broken radio channels. A Velkori pilot laughing in disbelief. A Draxan gunner slamming his fists against his console. A refugee transport captain whispering prayers through static. They thought the battle had turned. Captain Elena Cross did not. On the bridge of the Gravekeeper, she stared at the tactical screen without blinking. The swarm was not retreating. It was making room. Tactical, she said. What's behind them? The young officer at the weapons station frowned. Unknown contact, Captain. Large. Very large. The screen flickered. Then the darkness behind the Vorik fleet moved. At first, the assembly crews thought it was an asteroid field. Then the shapes connected. Massive plates of living armor unfolded across space. Long limbs stretched through clouds of debris. A mouth the size of a city opened in the center of the thing, filled with rings of rotating teeth. It was not a ship. It was a creature. A war organism grown in the dead oceans of conquered worlds. Its body was wrapped in black bone. Its veins glowed red beneath its armor. Thousands of smaller Vorik ships clung to its surface like parasites feeding from a god. The old lizard ambassador went pale. No, he whispered. They brought a world eater. The High Chancellor gripped the arms of his chair. I thought those were myths. The ambassador shook his head slowly. They are what made the myths. The world eater moved toward the gravekeeper. Every assembly warning system activated at once. Radiation alarms. Gravity alarms. Biological contamination alarms. Psychic pressure warnings. The creature was so massive that its body bent local space around it. Captain Cross watched it approach. Size. Almost 12 miles long, Tactical replied. Mass unknown. It's generating its own gravity field. The world eater opened its mouth. A beam of corrosive violet light struck the gravekeeper directly across the bow. For the first time the human ship shuddered. Art. Crew members grabbed railings. Sparks rained from the ceiling. One entire row of lights exploded across the bridge. Damage report, Cross snapped. Outer armor compromised on forward plates, the engineer called out. Still no breach, but Captain, that beam is eating through the metal. The assembly fleet fell silent. The Vorik had finally found something that could hurt the human ship. Captain Cross narrowed her eyes. Railguns. Full forward volley. The gravekeeper fired. Hundreds of tungsten rods slammed into the world eater's chest. The impact should have torn it apart. Instead, the creature's flesh opened, swallowed the wounds, and closed again. The holes healed in seconds. The world eater kept coming. Another violet beam hit the gravekeeper, carving a glowing scar down its side. This time, the bridge shook so violently that one officer fell from his chair. Captain, Tactical said, voice tight, our guns are punching through, but it's regenerating faster than we can damage it. On the assembly flagship, the High Chancellor slowly stood. Captain Cross, he said over the channel, pull back. That thing destroyed the Halion Armada in 1 hour. No metal can survive it. Captain Cross did not answer immediately. The world eater's tentacles spread wide, reaching for the human ship. The gravekeeper looked huge beside the assembly fleet. But beside the monster, even humanity's warships seemed small. The old lizard ambassador lowered his head. For a moment, the galaxy believed it had finally seen the limit of human strength. Then Captain Cross leaned toward the command console. Her voice was quiet, almost cold. They think because we built a big ship we only know how to shoot. The bridge crew turned toward her. A faint smile touched her face. They forgot something important. The world eater's shadow swallowed the bow of the gravekeeper. Captain Cross gave the next order. Prepare the burrow teams. The burrow team scene. For one frozen moment, nobody on the assembly channel understood what Captain Cross had said. The old lizard ambassador leaned closer to his screen. Burrow teams, he whispered. On the bridge of the gravekeeper, the answer came in the form of movement. Deep inside the ship, alarms changed tone. Not panic alarms. Launch alarms. Armored doors opened along the lower spine of the human battleship. Behind them sat rows of small black pods shaped like bullets, each one barely large enough to hold 6 soldiers in power armor. They were not elegant. They were not comfortable. They were not meant to return safely. Painted on the side of every pod were 2 words. Dig deep. Inside Pod 1, Sergeant Mara Holt locked her helmet into place and checked the heavy cutter in her hands. Around her, 5 other humans sat in silence, strapped into crash seats, surrounded by explosives, fire tanks, and drilling charges. A younger soldier swallowed hard. Sergeant, he said, we're really going inside that thing? Mara smiled behind her visor. It opened its mouth, didn't it? The pod bay officer spoke over the radio. Burrow teams ready, Captain. Captain Cross watched the world eater crawl closer. Its tentacles scraped against the bow armor of the gravekeeper, leaving burning trails. The creature's mouth opened again, preparing another violet blast. Launch, Cross said. The pods fired. Hundreds of black bullets shot from the belly of the gravekeeper. They did not fly toward the enemy ships. They did not aim at weak points on the outside armor. They aimed straight for the World Eater's flesh. The first pods hit like nails driven into meat. Drill heads screamed. Armor plates cracked. Explosive bolts detonated. One by one, the pods punched through the creature's outer shell and buried themselves deep inside. Across the assembly fleet, alien commanders watched in horror. "They are boarding it," the High Chancellor said. "No," the old ambassador corrected, voice shaking. "They are infecting it." Inside the World Eater, Pod 1 burst open. Sergeant Mara Holt stepped into darkness. The air was wet, hot, and alive. The floor pulsed beneath her boots. Thick veins glowed red along the walls. Somewhere deep inside the beast, something massive beat like a drum. The young soldier gagged. "It smells like a dead ocean." Mara lifted her cutter. "Good. Let's make it worse." The humans moved. They did not use graceful alien blades or clean energy pistols. They carried flamethrowers, mining drills, chemical sprayers, pressure bombs, and old-fashioned chain cutters designed for cutting asteroid rock. The World Eater had evolved to survive plasma. It had grown armor against lasers. It could heal wounds from railguns. It had never prepared for angry humans with industrial tools. Mara's team reached the first organ chamber. It was the size of a cathedral, filled with hanging sacks of acid and glowing nerves. Vorik workers crawled along the walls, clicking in alarm. Mara pointed at the largest pulsing sack. "That looks important." The humans opened fire. Flames filled the chamber. Chemical foam hardened across the walls. Explosive charges locked onto living tissue. The Vorik workers rushed forward, only to be cut down by heavy shotguns firing solid slugs. One human planted a bomb directly into a nerve cluster. Another poured a freezing agent into a blood channel. Mara drove her cutter into the beating sack and shouted into the radio. "Pod 1 to Gravekeeper. We found something ugly." Captain Cross answered. "Can you kill it?" Mara looked around as the chamber began to shake. "Oh, absolutely." Across the World Eater's body, the same thing was happening. Human teams burned through arteries. They poisoned regeneration glands. They cut nerve cords. They planted charges in organs the aliens did not even have names for. The creature began to scream. Not through radio. Not through sound. Through gravity. The entire Ravik system trembled as the World Eater thrashed. Its tentacles released the Gravekeeper. Its violet beam misfired, slicing through its own swarm ships. Vorik vessels scattered as their living god began tearing itself apart. The assembly watched in stunned silence. The monster that had destroyed armadas was not being defeated by superior technology. It was being murdered from the inside by mechanics with bad attitudes. "Captain," Tactical called from the bridge, "World Eater regeneration is failing. Internal pressure rising." Captain Cross opened the burrow team channel. "All teams get out." Mara heard the order as the organ chambers split open around her. "Charge is set," she said. "Running now." The humans sprinted back through burning tunnels as the creature convulsed. Behind them, bombs detonated one after another, each explosion deeper than the last. Pod 1 launched from the World Eater's side just as the main charges reached its 3 central hearts. For a heartbeat, the massive creature froze. Then it burst open from within. Blue fire tore through its ribs. Black armor plates spun into space. The city-sized mouth cracked in half. The World Eater, the nightmare that had swallowed entire colonies, became a cloud of burning flesh and bone. The Gravekeeper drifted through the remains, scarred but standing. Captain Cross opened a channel to the assembly fleet. Her voice was calm again. "Threat removed." The old lizard ambassador stared at the burning corpse. "How?" he whispered. Captain Cross looked at the tactical screen, where the burrow pods were returning one by one. "Simple," she said. "You built weapons to stop warships." Pause. "We brought miners." The moral heroism scene. The death of the World Eater broke the Vorik formation. Their swarm ships scattered across the Ravik system like insects fleeing a burning nest. Hundreds were destroyed in the creature's explosion. Hundreds more were torn apart by the Gravekeeper's railguns as they tried to escape. For the first time in months, the assembly fleet sounded alive. Alien captains cheered through damaged comms. Refugee ships flashed their lights. Even the proud Draxan admiral lowered his head in respect as the human battleship drifted through the wreckage of the impossible beast. The High Chancellor opened a direct channel to Captain Elena Cross. "Captain," he said, voice trembling, "you have saved the assembly fleet. The galaxy owes humanity a debt it can never repay." Captain Cross did not answer. She was staring at the tactical map. The Vorik were not running in all directions. A cluster of enemy ships had broken away from the main swarm and was moving fast toward the edge of the system. Too fast. Too organized. Tactical, Cross said. Where are those ships going? The officer checked the route. His expression changed. Captain, they're heading for Leora. The bridge went quiet. Leora was not a military world. It had no planetary shields. No orbital cannons. No war fleet. It was a farming moon covered in green valleys, shallow oceans and glass-domed cities where millions of civilians had taken shelter after fleeing the outer colonies. Mostly children. Mostly refugees. The Vorik had lost the battle. So now they were going to punish the helpless. Captain Cross turned toward navigation. Intercept course. The navigator swallowed. Captain, the enemy ships are smaller and faster. At maximum burn, we reach Leora 40 minutes after they do. 40 minutes. Long enough for the Vorik to burn every city from orbit. The High Chancellor heard the report and leaned toward his screen. Captain Cross, he said carefully, you have already done more than anyone believed possible. Your ship is damaged. Your armor is compromised. Your burrow teams are still recovering. You cannot save Leora. Captain Cross looked at him. On the screen her face was calm. That made it worse. Say that again, she said. The High Chancellor hesitated. Leora is lost. Every human on the bridge slowly turned toward the screen. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Captain Cross stepped closer to the camera. No, she said. Leora is occupied by civilians. Civilians are not lost while we are still breathing. The old lizard ambassador closed his eyes. Captain, if you push your engines beyond safety limits, your ship may tear itself apart. Cross looked back at her crew. No one looked away. The engineer was bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow. The tactical officer's hands were shaking from exhaustion. The burrow team survivors were still being pulled from their pods, burned, bruised, laughing like fools because they were alive. All of them heard the name. Leora. All of them knew what it meant. Captain Cross turned to engineering. How much power can you give me? The chief engineer wiped blood from his face. Safely? Cross said nothing. The engineer gave a tired smile. Right. I can give you enough to make every manual scream at us. Do it. Warning lights erupted across the bridge. The Gravekeeper's engines began to glow white-blue. Deep inside the ship, damaged reactors spun beyond recommended limits. The hull groaned. Plates already weakened by acid and violet fire started to bend under the pressure. Captain, navigation shouted, the drive core is unstable. Hold it together. Structural stress at 60%. Hold it together. 75. Captain Cross gripped the command rail. Hold. The Gravekeeper surged forward. It did not jump cleanly. It dragged itself through space like a wounded giant refusing to fall. Behind it, the assembly fleet watched in silence as the human ship chased the fleeing swarm. On Leora, civilians looked up. The sky was full of red. Vorik ships emerged above the green moon, opening their weapon bays over cities filled with refugees. Parents pulled children into underground shelters. Emergency sirens screamed. The governor sent one final message to the assembly. We have no defenses. Please remember us. The Vorik fired. But the beams never reached the cities. Space split open above Leora in a storm of blue fire. The Gravekeeper slammed out of emergency burn directly between the moon and the swarm. The first Vorik volley hit the human ship across its broadside. Armor exploded outward. Entire gun towers went dark. The bridge shook so violently that several officers fell from their stations. Damage? Cross shouted. Multiple breaches on outer decks, engineering replied. But civilian cities are untouched. Captain Cross rose slowly. Her eyes locked on the enemy ships. Good. The Vorik tried to go around. The Gravekeeper moved with them. They tried to dive lower. The Gravekeeper dropped into their path. They fired again and again, but every shot meant for Leora struck human steel instead. On the moon below, millions watched the black battleship cover the sky like a shield. Captain Cross opened all weapons channels. No one reaches the surface. The Gravekeeper fired. Railguns tore through the nearest swarm ships. Missile pods launched in waves. Point defense cannons filled orbit with burning metal. The Vorik were fast, but they were trapped between a helpless moon and a human ship that refused to move. One by one they died. The final Vorik cruiser tried to ram past the Gravekeeper toward the largest refugee city. Captain Cross did not waste ammunition. Helm, she said, put us in front of it. The navigator looked at her. Captain? You heard me. The Gravekeeper turned. The Vorik cruiser struck the human ship's reinforced bow and shattered against it like glass against a mountain. Then there was silence. Leora was safe. A transmission came from the moon below. The governor appeared on screen, tears running down his face. "Captain Cross," he whispered, "why? We are not human. We are not your colony. You almost destroyed your ship for us." Captain Cross looked down at the green moon. For a moment, her expression softened. "Because once," she said, "humanity knew what it felt like to look at the sky and pray someone would come." She paused. "So we decided we would." For 10 full seconds after the final Vorik cruiser shattered, nobody spoke. Not on the Gravekeeper. Not on Leora. Not across the assembly fleet. The battlefield above the farming moon was filled with wreckage, burning gas, broken armor, and drifting pieces of enemy ships. Beneath it all, Leora still turned quietly in space, its green valleys untouched, its glass city still shining under the pale sun. The civilians were alive. That was the only thing that mattered. Then the Gravekeeper began to fail. A deep metallic groan rolled through the ship from bow to stern. It sounded less like machinery and more like an ancient animal in pain. Lights flickered across the bridge. The gravity dipped for half a second, then slammed back hard enough to make wounded officers stumble. "Report," Captain Elena Cross ordered. The chief engineer's voice came through filled with static. "Forward armor is gone on 6 decks. Railgun batteries 3, 7, and 9 are offline. Emergency burn cracked the secondary spine. Reactor 2 is overheating. Reactor 4 is leaking coolant into the lower maintenance shafts." Pause. "And Captain?" Cross closed her eyes briefly. "How bad?" "If we try another emergency burn, the ship breaks in half." The bridge went quiet. On the main screen, the assembly flagship finally arrived near Leora. Smaller alien vessels slowed at a safe distance from the human battleship, as if afraid to come too close to something that looked half dead and still angry. The Gravekeeper no longer looked unstoppable. Its black hull was torn open in places. Entire armor plates had melted away. Smoke vented from the starboard side. One of its massive gun towers hung loose, connected only by twisted metal. The words painted across its side were burned and broken. And no one left had become. No one. That was enough. Captain Cross stared at the damaged letters and said nothing. Behind her, medical teams carried injured sailors from the lower decks. Some were burned. Some were bleeding. Some were laughing because they had survived something they should not have survived. Sergeant Mara Holt from the Burrow teams limped onto the bridge with one arm in a pressure sling. Captain Cross looked at her. "You were ordered to medical." Mara shrugged. "Medical was full. You look terrible." "With respect, Captain, so does the ship." For the first time since the battle began, a few tired humans smiled. Then the governor of Leora appeared again on the main screen. Behind him stood thousands of civilians packed into a shelter hall, all staring upward at the image of the battered human vessel. The governor lowered his head. "Every city on Leora is broadcasting your ship's name," he said. "The children are calling it the Sky Wall." Captain Cross did not seem proud. She only looked tired. "Tell them the wall held." The old lizard ambassador joined the channel moments later. His eyes moved across the damage reports scrolling beside the captain's face. "Captain Cross," he said softly, "why did you keep taking the hits? You could have saved your vessel by letting some shots through. One city lost would still have been considered an acceptable tactical outcome." The entire human bridge turned cold. Captain Cross faced him slowly. "Ambassador," she said, "humans do not measure children in acceptable losses." The ambassador lowered his head, ashamed. Across the galaxy, that sentence was recorded, repeated, translated, and replayed on every world that had survived the Vorik advance. For the first time, the assembly began to understand. Humanity was terrifying, yes, but not because it loved war. Humanity was terrifying because once it chose to protect something, it would spend steel, blood, ships, and lives without hesitation. The Gravekeeper floated above Leora like a broken mountain. Its guns were damaged. Its armor was torn. Its engines were wounded. But below it, millions of civilians looked up at the sky and knew one simple truth. The gardeners had planted themselves between death and the innocent. And they had not moved. The Gravekeeper limped toward Orion Station 3 days later. Orion was the largest neutral repair dock in the inner rim, a silver ring wrapped around a dead moon. It had ports big enough to hold assembly dreadnoughts, refugee carriers, and mining vessels the size of cities. But when the human battleship arrived, every ship near the station moved aside. Not because anyone ordered them to. because the Gravekeeper was too large to ignore. Its damaged hull cast a shadow across half the station. Repair drones gathered around it like insects around a wounded giant. Thousands of aliens watched from observation decks as the battered black ship slowly locked into the main dock. Some cheered. Some bowed. Some whispered prayers. But not everyone felt gratitude. Inside a private chamber overlooking the dock, Admiral Varese of the Corps Dominion watched the human ship with cold golden eyes. The Corps had once been known as the greatest military power in the assembly. Their fleets were beautiful, fast, and feared. Their admirals wore white armor and spoke of honor as if they had invented it. Now no one was speaking about Corps fleets. Everyone was speaking about humans. Varese curled his claws against the glass. Today they save us, he said quietly. Tomorrow they command us. One of his officers shifted nervously. The humans have not asked for power, Admiral. That makes them more dangerous. Varese turned from the window. The galaxy does not kneel to gardeners. His plan was simple. Not open war. An accident. A small Corps repair team would offer help to the wounded human ship. They would bring cooling equipment, replacement conduits, and a hidden device called a molecular fracture seed. The device would not explode. It would wait. Then, when the Gravekeeper activated its damaged engines, the seed would send a silent vibration through the cracked spine of the ship. Human steel would become brittle. Armor plates would split. The mighty battleship would break apart in front of the entire station. A tragedy. A warning. A lesson. Captain Elena Cross met the Corps repair team at Docking Gate 7. Admiral Varese smiled with perfect politeness. Captain Cross, he said, bowing. The Corps Dominion honors your courage. Allow our engineers to assist your repairs. Our thermal stabilizers are the finest in the assembly. Captain Cross looked at him for a long moment. She had not slept properly in 3 days. Her uniform was clean, but her eyes were sharp and tired. My engineers can handle it. Varese widened his smile. Of course. But refusing assistance may insult certain allies. Cross stared at him. Wouldn't want that. So the Corps engineers came aboard. They walked through the lower engine decks carrying silver tool cases and false smiles. Human crew members watched them carefully, but the Corps moved like professionals. They scanned pipes. Checked coolant valves. Pretended to help. Then, deep near the cracked secondary spine, one engineer removed the fracture seed from his case. He reached behind a fuel conduit and locked it into place. Done, he whispered. The gardeners will fall apart the next time they move. But he did not notice the old woman standing behind him. Her name was Chief Marisol Vega. She was 68 years old, 5 feet tall, and had worked on human engines longer than the Corps spy had been alive. She held a wrench in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. That, she said, is not a thermal stabilizer. The Corps engineer froze. Chief Vega took one step forward. And that is my engine room. The spy lunged. Vega threw the coffee in his face. The Corps screamed. The wrench hit his wrist. The device fell from his hand and clattered across the floor. Within seconds, human security flooded the corridor. On the bridge, Captain Cross watched the live feed in silence. Admiral Varese appeared on screen moments later, his face pale. Captain, this was clearly the work of rogue agents. The Dominion had no knowledge. Cross cut the channel. Then she opened a station-wide broadcast. Every screen on Orion Station filled with her face. Admiral Varese, she said, voice calm and cold, you tried to break my ship while my crew was repairing damage we took saving your civilians. Outside the station, the Gravekeeper's engines rumbled. The whole dock trembled. The wounded battleship moved forward just enough for its massive bow to stop inches from Varese's private flagship. Captain Cross continued. Humanity has a rule. Pause. We do not start fights. The bow of the Gravekeeper lowered slightly, casting darkness over the golden Corps ship. But we finished them. Varese did not speak. Neither did anyone else. If I find another Corps device on my ship, Cross said, I will not fire a single gun. Her eyes hardened. I will park the Gravekeeper on your capital palace and let gravity explain diplomacy. The broadcast ended. Across Orion Station no one cheered. No one laughed. They simply understood. The humans were protectors. But protection was not weakness. And the gardeners had thorns. The sabotage failed but the war did not end. While the Gravekeeper sat wounded inside Orion Station, the remaining Vorik swarm vanished from every sensor net in the inner rim. For 2 days there were no attacks. No burning colonies. No distress calls. No black ships crawling out of hyperspace. The assembly wanted to believe the enemy had finally broken. Captain Elena Cross did not. She stood inside the Gravekeeper's damaged command center, staring at a map of the galaxy while engineers welded plates back into place around her. Predators don't disappear because they're afraid, she said quietly. Chief Vega looked up from a repair tablet. Then why do they disappear? Cross touched the center of the map. Because they found something bigger to bite. The answer came 6 hours later. Every screen in the assembly chamber went black. Every communication tower across Orion Station screamed with static. Then a single image appeared. A Vorik Queen. She was larger than any drone, wrapped in pale armor, her many eyes glowing like dying stars. Behind her was not a fleet. Was a machine. A ring of black metal built around a collapsed star at the edge of the galactic core. Energy twisted inside it like a storm trapped in a cage. The old lizard ambassador whispered the name before anyone else could. The Null Crown. The High Chancellor turned pale. That is impossible. It was only a theory. The Vorik Queen's voice entered every mind at once. Not through sound. Through thought. You killed our bodies. You burned our children. Now we will unmake your stars. Across the station, aliens collapsed to their knees, clutching their heads. Humans staggered, gritting their teeth as the psychic pressure hammered against their skulls. The Queen continued. When the Null Crown opens, every jump route in the Milky Way will collapse. Every star lane will fold inward. Your worlds will be separated forever. Your colonies will starve in silence. Your empires will die alone. The image changed. A countdown appeared. 6 hours. The assembly chamber erupted into panic. If the jump routes collapse, the High Chancellor said, we cannot move food, medicine, refugees, fleets, nothing. A Velkori scientist shook violently. The device is inside a gravity storm. No fleet can reach it. The pressure will crush any ship before it gets close. All eyes turned toward Captain Cross. Her face remained still. The High Chancellor spoke carefully. Captain, can the Gravekeeper reach it? Chief Vega answered before Cross could. No. The chamber went silent. The old engineer stepped forward, grease still on her hands. The secondary spine is cracked. 2 reactors are unstable. Half our forward armor is missing. If we enter a gravity storm, the ship will hold for maybe 20 minutes. And after that? The ambassador asked. Vega looked at him. After that, we become history. The High Chancellor lowered his gaze. Then there is no hope. Captain Cross looked at the countdown. 5 hours, 58 minutes. Then she turned toward the damaged bridge of her ship. Humans were working everywhere. Welding. Bleeding. Carrying cables. Replacing burnt circuits by hand. Tired humans. Wounded humans. Stubborn humans. Cross opened the ship-wide channel. All crew, this is the captain. Every human aboard stopped. The Vorik have built a weapon that will cut the galaxy apart. We are the only ship close enough to try. No one spoke. Our hull is broken. Our engines are unstable. Our odds are bad. Chief Vega muttered, that's generous. A few sailors smiled. Captain Cross continued. I will not order anyone into this. Escape craft are available. Anyone who wants off this ship may leave with honor. Silence. 1 second. 5. 10. No one moved. Then Sergeant Mara Holt's voice came over the channel from the medical bay. Captain, with respect, my arm's broken, not my legs. Laughter spread through the ship. Chief Vega picked up her wrench. Well, she said, if we're becoming history, I'd like to make sure history has working engines. Captain Cross looked at the map one last time. The Null Crown pulsed at the edge of the galactic core like a black heartbeat. Normal weapons could not solve this. Speed could not solve this. Armor could not solve this. For the first time, the Gravekeeper had nothing simple to shoot. Captain Cross sat in her command chair. Undocked the ship. Orion Station Control protested immediately. Captain, your repairs are incomplete. Cross looked at the burning countdown. So is the war. The docking clamps released. Slowly, painfully, the wounded human battleship pulled away from the station. Across thousands of alien worlds, people watched the live broadcast in silence. The gardeners were moving again. And this time, everyone understood the truth. They were not sailing toward victory. They were sailing toward sacrifice.
At this point, the galaxy has seen what humanity really is. The TNS Gravekeeper shattered the Warwick front line with railguns. The aliens called primitive. It faced the world easter, and when brute force failed, Captain Elena Cross sent in Sergeant Mera Holt and the Borrow teams to kill the monster from the inside with drills, fire, bombs, and miners' tools. Then came Laura, where millions of refugees wanted beneath a defenseless sky. Captain Cross refuses to measure children in acceptable losses. The Gravekeeper took every hit, mean for Moon, and became the wall between death and the innocent. Even sabotage from Admiral Verse could not break it because the gardeners had thorns. But now the Warwick Queen has revealed the Null Crown, a weapon that can cut the galaxy apart by collapsing every jump route. The Gravekeeper is damaged, its spine cracked, its rectors unstable, and its crew exhausted. Yet no one leaves. This is no longer a battle for victory. This is the moment humanity chooses what it is willing to become, so everyone else can live.
The Gravekeeper entered the gravity storm with every alarm screaming. Space around the galactic core was not normal space. It bent and twisted like black water being pulled down an endless drain. Stars stretched into thin white lines. Time flickered across the bridge instruments, jumping forward, then backward, then stopping for half a second before starting again. The Null Crown waited at the center of it all. A black ring wrapped around a collapsed star, pulsing with enough power to tear the galaxy's jump routes apart. Captain Elena Cross stood at the command rail. Distance? 2 million kilometers, navigation replied. Gravity pressure rising. The ship groaned. A deep crack echoed through the hull. Chief Vega's voice came over the channel. Captain, we just lost outer armor on the port side. Reactor 2 is shaking itself apart. Can you keep us moving? For a little while. How little? Vega paused. The kind of little you don't want written down. Captain Cross looked at the screen. The Vorik Queen appeared above the Null Crown, protected by the last of her swarm. Her psychic voice slammed into the bridge. You cannot stop this. Several officers fell to their knees. Blood ran from the nose of the tactical officer. Even Captain Cross gripped the rail harder as memories flashed through her mind, burning cities, broken ships, Earth under red emergency lights. The Queen pushed deeper. You're afraid. Cross lifted her head. Yes, she whispered. We are. The crew looked at her. Then Cross stepped closer to the screen. That is why we came. She turned to tactical. All remaining guns. Fire. The Gravekeeper unleashed everything it had left. Railguns thundered. Missiles streaked forward. Point defense cannons ripped into the remaining Vorik ships. The swarm tried to block the human vessel, but the Gravekeeper did not slow. It rammed through the wreckage. One enemy cruiser struck the bow and shattered. Another wrapped itself around the starboard side before human marines cut it loose with emergency charges. Explosions crawled across the hull like lightning. Distance? 1 million kilometers. Engine status? Chief Vega laughed once through the static. Bad. The Null Crown began to open. Inside the ring, darkness unfolded like an eye. Across the galaxy, jump beacons flickered. Refugee ships lost their routes. Colony worlds screamed as their sky relays died one by one. The High Chancellor's voice broke over the channel. Captain Cross, the device is activating. Can you destroy it? Tactical answered quietly. Negative. The ring is shielded by the collapsed star's gravity. Our weapons can't reach the core. For the first time, the bridge became truly silent. Then Chief Vega spoke. We don't have to destroy it. Captain Cross turned. Vega's face appeared on the side monitor, lit by sparks and fire. The Null Crown is anchored to the collapsed star. If we push the ring past the event horizon, the activation wave gets trapped inside the gravity well. Navigation stared at the numbers. Chief, that would require physical contact. I know. And anything pushing it would cross the horizon too. Vega looked at Captain Cross. I know. Everyone understood. The Gravekeeper could still save the galaxy. But it could not come back. Captain Cross opened the ship-wide channel. All hands, she said softly, prepare escape pods. No one moved. She looked around the bridge. That was an order. Sergeant Mara Holt's voice came from the marine deck. Respectfully denied, Captain. Chief Vega lifted her wrench toward the camera. My engines don't run themselves. The navigator wiped blood from his lip. Helm stays with the ship. The tactical officer sat back in his chair. Guns stay too. Across every deck, wounded, exhausted humans strapped themselves into stations. Captain Cross closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, they were steady. Very well. The Gravekeeper turned its wounded bow toward the Null Crown. The Queen screamed inside their minds. Madness. You will die for aliens who mocked you. Captain Cross answered over open broadcast so every world could hear. No. The engines burned white. We die for the ones still alive. The Gravekeeper struck the Null Crown. The impact split the front of the ship open. Armor peeled backward. Gun towers snapped from their mounts. The black ring screamed against human steel as the battleship pushed it toward the collapsed star. Engines at 110%. Vega shouted. More, Cross said. 120. More. The ship began to tear itself apart. Decks collapsed. Corridors bent. The words on the hull burned away completely. But the Gravekeeper kept pushing. The Null Crown slipped closer to the event horizon. The Queen's psychic scream changed. For the first time it sounded afraid. Stop. Captain Cross smiled faintly. Humanity is very bad at that. The ring crossed the point of no return. The activation wave detonated. For one impossible second, the center of the galaxy lit up with white fire. The black hole swallowed the blast, trapping the death wave inside itself. The jump route stabilized. The stars held. The galaxy lived. On the bridge, the light faded to a single distant dot. Captain Cross opened one final channel. This is the Terran Navy ship Gravekeeper. Her voice was calm. The garden is safe. Static filled the transmission. Then one last sentence came through. Tell Earth we stayed. The signal vanished. And the Gravekeeper fell into the dark. 100 years later, the Galactic Assembly no longer met beneath the old crystal dome. That building still stood, but nobody called it the center of power anymore. The true center of the galaxy was now Leora Memorial Plaza, built on the same green moon where millions of civilians had once looked up and watched a broken human battleship place itself between them and death. Every year, ships from 1,000 worlds came there. Velkori children with silver eyes. Draxan cadets in polished armor. Orathi clouds glowing softly in glass spheres. Core pilgrims who came in silence, carrying white flowers as apology. And humans. Always humans. At the center of the plaza stood a statue. It was not beautiful. It was not smooth. It was not made to look graceful or divine. It was a massive black model of an ugly Terran battleship, covered in scars, broken armor plates, and silent railguns. The TNS Gravekeeper. At its base, words were carved in every known language of the galaxy. But the largest words were written in simple English. They were mocked as gardeners. They became the wall. They were first to arrive. And last to leave. Children would stand beneath the statue and ask their teachers why the humans had done it. Why they had saved worlds that were not theirs. Why they had died for species that had laughed at them. Why they had stayed when escape pods were still available. And every teacher gave the same answer. Because that is what humans do. The galaxy changed after the Gravekeeper disappeared. The assembly became the Terran Accord, not because humans demanded control, but because every race agreed that power should belong to those willing to protect the weak. Warships across the galaxy changed their first law. Not victory. Not conquest. Not honor. Protection. And on every rescue vessel, every hospital ship, every border patrol cruiser, one human phrase was painted near the bridge. No one left. Some said the Gravekeeper was gone forever. Others believed something survived inside the black hole. A signal. A heartbeat. A stubborn machine refusing to die. Every few years, listening stations near the galactic core reported the same impossible sound. 3 faint pulses through the static. Then silence. No scientist could explain it. But humans always smiled when they heard the recording. Because to them it sounded like a promise. Somewhere in the deepest dark, beyond gravity, beyond time, beyond the reach of stars, the Gravekeeper was still watching. Still waiting. Still guarding the garden.
And that is why the Gravekeeper was remembered for 100 years. Not the strongest ship, not the most beautiful weapon, and not as a symbol of conquest. It was remembered because it stood where others retreated. It protects Caroline's survivors, Laurel's children, the broken fleets of assembly, and even the species that once mocked humanity for gardeners. Captain Elana Cross, Chief Marisol Vega, Sergeant Mara Holt, and even human who stayed aboard the Gravekeeper proved the same lesson. True power is not the ability to destroy. True power is the willingness to protect. The assembly became the Terran Accord because the galaxy finally understood that leadership belongs to those who shield the weak, not those who dominate them. The phrase "no one left" became more than point on a warship. It became a promise, and somewhere beyond gravity, beyond time, and beyond the reach of stars, the Gravekeeper remains a legend because humanity did not come to rule the garden, humanity came to guard it.